You're watching someone kick a ball against a wall. It's a Tuesday. They have nowhere to be. No job, no meeting in 40 minutes, no mortgage. They're just kicking a ball against a wall for the pleasure of it. You've probably never done that as an adult. But for several centuries in medieval Europe, the person kicking that ball wasn't a child skipping school. They were a farmer, an apprentice, a tradesman. And the game they were playing was so violent, so ungoverned, that it would get them arrested under a royal decree issued by Edward III in 1363. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was distracting them from archery practice. This is the story of what medieval people actually played, and it will tell you more about what you've lost than you're probably comfortable knowing. Start with the assumption. When we imagine medieval leisure, we imagine misery with brief interruptions. Plague, poverty, back-breaking labor. The assumption is that play was a luxury the medieval peasant simply couldn't afford. That assumption is wrong. Eamon Duffy, in his 1992 study, The Stripping of the Altars, documented that in late medieval England, the church calendar contained between 40 and 60 obligatory feast days per year, days on which ordinary work was prohibited or heavily discouraged. Add Sunday, and medieval laborers were looking at roughly 80 to 90 days per year structurally set aside from labor. A full-time worker in the modern United Kingdom receives 28 days of statutory paid holiday. Medieval peasants had 3 times that. They didn't call it vacation, they called it the Feast of St. Bartholomew, but the effect was the same. Large blocks of time existed in which ordinary people had nothing required of them, and they filled that time with sport. The sports they played were not what you're picturing. Medieval English football had no fixed teams, no referees, no goalposts, and in some versions, no agreed-upon boundaries at all. What historians call mob football was played between entire villages across miles of open countryside, with hundreds of participants on each side. The object was to move an inflated pig's bladder from one village landmark to another. How you moved it was ungoverned. Carry it, kick it, throw it, or wrestle it away by any means available. Injuries were common. Deaths were not unheard of. The historical record is specific. In 1314, the Lord Mayor of London, Nicholas de Farndone, issued a proclamation banning football after complaints about property damage, describing hustling over large balls in the streets. The document survives in the calendar of letter books of the City of London. Edward III issued at least 6 separate national bans during his reign. They were ignored every time. The game continued. The bans continued. Neither side gave in. This is the first thing worth understanding about medieval sport. It was not organized from above. It emerged from the bottom of society and stayed there, absorbing royal decrees and church sermons without changing its essential nature. The closest modern parallel is not any sport you can watch on television. It is a group of people deciding to go to a park on Saturday. Informal, ungoverned, completely dependent on whoever showed up. The nobility had their own parallel universe. The early medieval tournament, the mêlée, was a mock battle across miles of countryside in which teams of knights fought until one side was captured or exhausted. Death was common enough that Pope Innocent II banned tournaments at the Second Lateran Council in 1139 on the grounds they were producing bodies requiring Christian burial. It was also, among other things, a business model. William Marshall, who died in 1219 as one of the most powerful men in England, rose from relative poverty almost entirely through tournament prize money and ransoms. The anonymous author of the Histoire de Guillaume le Maréchal, compiled around 1226, records that in a single 10-month period, Marshall and one partner captured and ransomed over 500 knights. Between the tournament and the village football match sat the everyday texture of medieval play. Wrestling appears in manor court records, saints' lives, and illuminated manuscripts across every social class. Tennis, called jeu de paume, the game of the palm, spread from French monasteries to royal courts across Europe during the 12th and 13th centuries. By 1292, Paris had 13 dedicated courts. By the late 15th century, over 200. Archery was simultaneously sport and military obligation, with formal competitions emerging from the parish practice grounds Edward III required every English town to maintain. All of it was embedded in something modern sport has entirely dismantled. Medieval sport was not watched. It was played. The village football match had no spectators because everyone was playing. Wrestling on feast days drew crowds that immediately joined in. The line between participant and audience either didn't exist or was so porous that the current arrangement, millions of people paying to watch 22 professionals kick a ball, would have been structurally incomprehensible to a medieval peasant. There was also no professional class. The craftsman who won the parish archery competition on St. Bartholomew's Day went back to his workshop the next morning. No transfer market, no agents, no broadcast rights. The game belonged to whoever was playing it, and when the feast day ended, it dissolved back into ordinary life. The peasant who played mob football across 2 miles of Suffolk countryside on Shrove Tuesday had no financial relationship to the game whatsoever. He did not pay to watch it, he did not pay to participate. He showed up because his village was playing the next village. That game was completely, structurally his, in a way that no sporting event in your life has ever been. Here is the indictment. We took the ungoverned, participatory sports of the medieval world and professionalized them, scheduled them, priced them, and converted them from activities into content. Medieval football survived 6 royal bans because it belonged to the people playing it. Modern football survives every crisis because it is owned by people who are not playing it. Medieval people had no word for fan, no concept of supporting a team you do not play for. You played, or you didn't. Those were the only 2 options. We built stadiums to watch other people play, sold the seats to people who couldn't afford them, streamed the games to everyone else, and then commissioned public health reports wondering why physical activity rates are in decline. The mob football match in 14th century Suffolk was banned because it was dangerous, ungoverned, and consumed an entire day. We replaced it with something safe, governed, and 90 minutes long. Then we put it behind a paywall and called it the beautiful game. Same impulse, entirely different hypocrisies.